Coming up on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, we discuss the top 10 takeaways from preseason week 1. We dive into the action, key players like CJ Stroud, first action as a pro. We saw Kenny Pickett and more start. So we're going to break down our top 10 takeaways. Before we do, I just want to send my thoughts and prayers out to everybody in Hawaii right now dealing with the wildfires. Hope you guys stay safe and make sure, I hope nothing but speedy recovery for those neighborhoods as well. But let's start the show. Top 10 takeaways for preseason week 1, starting right now on the Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel. Help me dive into this week's episode and the top 10 takeaways. I've brought in Sky Guasco. You can follow him at Sky Guasco on Twitter. What's going on, Sky?
Happy to be back, Bob. Send the blessings out to Maui as well. I have lots of ohana out there on the islands. I've been playing music on Hawaii for about 10 years, and devastating news. Lots of friends and family of mine have lost everything in Lahaina. So blessings, most certainly. Hopefully we could take a little ease off here with some football chatter.
Yes, honestly, everybody stay safe, and I wish nothing but those communities a speedy recovery. Now, Sky, we're going to talk quickly about the top 10 takeaways today. Before we start diving into that, we do have some breaking news, and they're big ones. Some of the running back shoes have finally dropped. The first one was Zeke Elliott signing with the New England Patriots. First thoughts about the signing?
Yeah, on one hand, it's surprising because so much of the hype was Ramondre Stevenson. But on the other hand, it's not surprising because Bill Belichick, Robert Kraft, the Patriots have made this move numerous times over the last 20 years or so, bringing in a seasoned veteran, if nothing else, to change a pace back. We know that they like to have 3, 4, 5 guys with individually designated roles. If Zeke Elliott only gets inside the 5-yard line carries, he's going to be a running back 2, maybe. Ramondre Stevenson is going to be a running back 2. Neither one of them are going to be great for fantasy week in and week out. I think of LeGarrette Blount over the years. So it might be a LeGarrette Blount, James White type situation versus Ramondre out in front and Zeke playing a backup role. I just don't see that happening.
You know, it does worry me a little bit because I could see, even if, for example, he takes a lot of the Damian Harris work and besides the 20s and all that, we still saw an impact. You know, there was about a 6 carry difference between with and without Damian Harris last year. And I know people say all the time, like, receptions are more valuable, and they are. But at the same time, 6 more carries, most running backs average about a half a point a carry. So right there, you're probably looking at 3 points less in fantasy football, maybe 2 to 3 points less than his projection. So now, does the second round pick make sense? So the question is, on the hot seat right now, are you taking Ramondre in round 2 right now, Scott?
No, absolutely not. I mean, in round 2, maybe I probably was anyway, but I'm lower than the industry anyway. I know, Mike Wright of the Fantasy Footballers is easily the highest. I think he has him as RB3 or did before this. He's outside of my top 12, to be honest with you. And I expected not a Zeke higher necessarily, but Fournette could have gone over there as well. Kareem Hunt is still around. So I was pretty confident that Patriots would bring in somebody. I don't love the goal line back kind of guy like Zeke Elliott because Bill Belichick could straight up only give him goal line work, which could then hurt both running backs. So no, I'm not excited about that. And unless he falls in the 3rd round, which he probably won't, I probably will not be finding myself with any Ramondre this season.
I had him as an RB8, 21st overall. I probably will slip him down maybe now behind Taylor and Jacobs, Mixon, those workhorse guys. And then I'll start considering him in that Walker Harris range for me. But overall, that's a tough one to swallow, but should have been expected. All right. The other one, of course, is Dalvin Cook signs with the New York Jets. First reactions on Cook to the Jets for you, Sky.
Yeah, this one I actually love. I maybe am one of the few people that think that Dalvin Cook has quite a bit left in the tank. I'm not sure why people have just kind of thrown him out to pasture because the Vikings have moved on. It makes sense contractually, and they got, Alexander Madison coming up. But Dalvin Cook is by no means done. I think Zeke is, older body-wise than Dalvin Cook would be. I love this move. It's unfortunate for Breece Hall, of course. But again, he's coming back off an injury. And I think I was planning on fading him a little bit anyway, just because we never know coming back from a knee tear and things like that. So from a Jets perspective, bringing in Aaron Rodgers, having the draft class that they've had, and improve offensive line, defense overall, the receiving core that they have, now Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall. They're taking the load off of both of those guys and having a two-headed monster. Going to be very frustrating for fantasy football, but for NFL, amazing pickup for the Jets. And I got to be honest, I'm probably going to go Dalvin Cook wherever the value ends up landing over Breece Hall and whatever his value is.
Yeah, I think I'm a little disappointed because I was fading Breece Hall because of the injury, and now it's like his ADP is probably going to fall significantly enough to where it's like, all right. The one thing I haven't dove into the numbers yet, but I think Nathaniel Hackett, when he was with, of course, he played, who's the OC alongside Matt LaFleur with Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. You think they paired Aaron Jones with A.J. Dillon, and A.J. Dillon as the RB2 saw 180 carries in back-to-back seasons. So it's not unheard of that they don't just lean 100%. Aaron Jones was never like a 350, 400 touch running back. So honestly, this allows them to take a longer term look at Breece Hall. Of course, Dalvin Cook's coming off shoulder injury, surgery this offseason as well. But I think both of them, I'm kind of interested to see where it goes. I actually think if you're Dalvin Cook might be that early season guy, the one that gets probably the 1A looks while Breece Hall gets up to speed. By midseason, you're probably looking at more of a 50-50 split. But I'm interested to dive into the numbers. However, it's where they didn't go. Obviously, the Cowboys, there's still Leonard Fournette and Kareem Hunt out there as looming large. You know, those are two really good backs that could play 3-down skill sets that could impact Tony Pollard. But the other one is the Miami Dolphins. I think right now today, you know, we're going to talk about that backfield in a little bit too, but I think Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, you know, I've heard a lot of things that Mostert is kind of might start off the season kind of like, I kind of view it as the Cordell Patterson situation from last year where probably the first month you're going to have a solid RB2, and then Tyler Algier, a.k.a. Devin Achane, kind of over the season starts building up, and he becomes a value in the second half. But any final thoughts before we dive into our top 10s, guy?
Yeah, just, you know, looking a little bit below the surface like we like to do here to give a little extra content that maybe other programs aren't diving into. I just want to talk about the offensive lines a bit here. Dallas, of course, has a top 6-7 offensive line still, maybe top 5. Zeke obviously is leaving that, going to New England. That drops quite significantly. And then the Jets are still down in like the bottom, you know, 5 to 6. So I don't love either one of those. And that stuff does matter to me when I'm looking ahead of time. But obviously Aaron Rodgers leading that Jets offense. I love it for Dalvin Cook. Dumped off a ton to Aaron Jones over the last couple of seasons. So I love Dalvin Cook there. I'm moving him up in my rankings as we speak. And I mean, as far as the Dolphins, we will get into them in just a second here, but there's a lot of mouths to feed. Dalvin Cook was basically on his way there, didn't go. And now there's a couple spots. Like I still think Leonard Fournette, I'm just going to say it right now, I think he goes to the Raiders eventually. He's a good fill-in for Josh Jacobs. And then Kareem Hunt could go really anywhere with his multifaceted skill sets. And then there's a couple other free agents lingering around as well. But it is important to note that Dalvin Cook, $8.6 million for one season in a year that we're not paying running backs. That signifies to me immediately that he is definitely the starting running back. He is definitely the first and second down running back week 1 right off the bat. I think you nailed it, Bob. He's going to get that first run, get Breece Hall up to speed. Maybe week 5, 6, 7, it's a two-headed monster. Breece takes over later if he's healthy. But either way, Dalvin Cook will be the starting running back, in my opinion, starting week 1. So I'm going to take that value instead of Breece Hall, who I was fading anyway.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into our top 10 takeaways. There was a lot of excitement. First off, the first thing there's two things I look at the most. And before we start getting into this, you're not going to hear a lot of numbers in production. Reason why is the production really doesn't matter as much. It's more the usage. Who's playing with the first team quarterback? Who's sitting with the first team quarterback means just as much as who plays with the first team quarterback in some cases. So we're going to break that down in our top 10 preseason takeaways. We got our first glimpse of guys like CJ Stroud and Bryce Young, who played a little bit. We got to see who was on the field with those guys. We got to see Jordan Love in action again in the preseason, you know, playing well with Watson and Dobbs and also the impact on Luke Musgrave. So there's a bunch of really key nuggets that we're going to break down in today's show. Let's get to the first one. And I'll admit, got me a little, the first person I think about when I think Eagles backfield and Kenny Gainwell, I think of Sky Guasco.
The only person that's believed in him in 4 years. The only person who's believed in him.
Listen,
Kenny,
I
got
your
back,
credit.
baby. I got your back, Kenny.
Now, before we get too excited about this, Now, a lot of people out there are going to say that, and which makes sense, is that DeAndre Swift and Rashaad Penny are new to the offense, so that's why they were in the game. And I completely understand that philosophy. But at the same time, you could look around the league and other guys sat who are new to teams in week one when the starter sat. So it's not I know different coaching staffs, but I think the other aspect of this situation is the fact that they've been talking up Kenny Gainwell prior to the game about him being the number one back, and with Rashaad Penny playing with the third team and DeAndre Swift taking more of a pass game role. And listen, we saw, if you just look at Kenny Gainwell's stats down the stretch last year, even in the playoffs, he started getting a lot of work, double-digit carries in 3 straight games. They started trusting him, and he produced in the biggest games of the year. So, Sky, I know you love him, but what's your quick thoughts about the Eagles' backfield and what this actually means for fantasy football?
Yeah, it was tongue-in-cheek a little bit the last 2 years because I knew that he wasn't going to supplant Miles Sanders, but I legit will stand by it, and I said it for 2 years. If Kenny Gainwell and Miles Sanders got exactly the same amount of touches on exactly the same amount of play calls, blah, 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 had identical workloads, I'm very confident Kenny Gainwell would have just outpaced Miles Sanders. I just think he's a better running back. Now he gets the opportunity. You're right. Before coming into the week, when he didn't play, before coming into the week, he had majority of the snaps with the first team. That tells you and me that he is the number one running back on paper right now. They need the new guys to learn the system, to get the reps, to see what they've got. Rashaad Penny's fine, and he had some nice bursts with Seattle. I think that's a product of the offense, and he also has not been able to stay healthy. Neither has DeAndre Swift, unfortunately, but I think DeAndre Swift is no question a much, much better running back than Rashaad Penny. I think right now it's Gainwell, Swift, Penny, and I think Penny's a distant third. I'm willing to draft both Gainwell and Swift. Swift is still going significantly higher, and he might be the second running back or maybe third down back to get started. And Gainwell, you're still getting for nothing in drafts. And I think right now he's the starter. Even if he isn't, I think he's a high-profile handcuff in what should be one of the league's best running offenses in the NFL. So I'm just happy to see it come to fruition finally. Very excited about Kenny Gainwell, and I've been pumping up the DeAndre Swift train as well, and he looked quite good. It was only 2 carries, but a nice 22-yard scamper with DeAndre Swift. I think he does very well behind this offensive line. Rashaad Penny's not even close to my draft board.
I actually moved Swift down significantly in my top 150, and Gainwell is now inside my top 100 picks. I have him ahead of Rashaad Penny, but I have
So did you basically flip them? Did you have Swift higher than that before the weekend?
No.
Did you?
Yeah, Swift was like tops. It was like 60th overall, and now I have him like 80th. I still have Gainwell second. I did update it to have Gainwell as the RB2 for now, but I have it where you're going to get Gainwell. If you use my top 150, you're going to get Gainwell every time, and you're never going to get Swift. But if it gets to a point where Swift is going to fall into the 7th, 8th round, I'm going to start taking Swift because I think there is going to be value there. However, it's a mobile quarterback. And by the way, last year, there was literally Detroit had half the running back, had twice as many targets to running backs than the Eagles did last year. The Eagles are not throwing to their running back. So the passing game role for a running back in this offense is not that great. So I want the 1A, I want the 1A runner. That's who I want. If it's Gainwell, I want Gainwell. I'm not going to lean on a mobile quarterback who has stud weapons, by the way. They're not going to use a passing down back enough to make him valuable, but Swift is a stud. So I'm still willing to take him ahead of Gainwell right now, but I think he's on notice. I think he's getting close. So I have him in now. I have Gainwell inside my top 100. Let's jump down to the next one. It is Greg Dulcich plays behind Adam Trautman with the first team. So Russell Wilson, we got a huge glimpse of Russell Wilson. He played 20 snaps. Trautman played 15 of them, 3 targets. Dulcich only played 10 with 1 target in this game. A lot of us are banking on Greg Dulcich being that Joker, Jimmy Graham type role. But remember, Adam Trautman, former Saints, they went out and got him from New Orleans to bring him over. So Sean Payton's boy, remember, this is the biggest problem with banking on incumbent players with new coaching staffs. You do not know how that coaching staff views Greg Dulcich. It sounds nice, but when it comes to being on the field with Russell Wilson, it was Adam Trautman. So Sky, quick thoughts. Are you still taking a shot on Greg Dulcich later in drafts?
It's just really tough. I don't dislike Greg Dulcich as an individual player or talent in this offense, But I mean, Greg Dulcich is somebody, in my opinion, with Tyler Higbee, Chika Conquo, we've talked about Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, Juwan Johnson, Dalton Kincaid, Irv Smith, even. All those guys are the same guy. If you pass on the big dogs, you're getting one of them at the 12th, 15th round, and you're shooting darts anyway. I think what's important to realize, week 1 preseason is just, this is a fun episode. A lot of this stuff could be completely backwards in 4 days, right? So we're just kind of reading the tea leaves, if you will. Something to really monitor that I've been taking away from preseason over the years is like, how do we read preseason? And you and I, Bob, talk a lot about, we don't get super hyped on coaches speak in a positive. We look at the quote unquote negatives or the fades and why they happen. With Greg Dulcich, I don't think he's in the doghouse by any means, but you're right. We always talk about continuity with quarterbacks and wide receivers mainly, but coaches and players in general, that matters as well. Trautman has recent history. Sean Payton said prior to the game that Greg Dulcich needed to improve as a blocker, as a tight end. We talk about this once or twice every single year around draft season, Bob. We say the same thing. Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, Gronkowski forever. They're elite pass catchers and playmakers. But why did they get to that realm in fantasy football? Because they're on the field every single snap. Why is that? It's because they block and they end their run game. So if Greg Dulcich can't remain in the run game, we know Adam Trautman can, and Sean Payton trusts him. So I think that's why the start happened. Talent-wise, I think it's Dulcich by far. But Trautman does have the rapport there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Dulcich also got a bit beat up there, so he had flashes, and we'll see what happens. But it was nice to see Russ out there for a number of plays. I think the Broncos are going to surprise this year.
I think the biggest issue is that they have Judy Sutton, and now we're also talking Mims, right? So they have 3 wide receivers that we like for fantasy. They also have Samaje Perine and hopefully Javonte Williams at some point. A lot of competition for a guy who's not going to be an every down tight end. I bumped him down my rankings for the tight ends right now. I'm not going to be targeting him that much anymore until we see that flip. But for now, I definitely think this is something to monitor. All right, let's jump down to Isaiah Hodgins, plays with the second team. Now, I think we're kind of been searching for that. Who's going to be the wide receiver 1 behind Darren Waller as the tight end for that offense? I do think early on in the process, I was in on Isaiah Hodgins, but I'm starting to feel like it was a nice thing that happened down the stretch last year, but it's starting to show that he's obviously not viewed as the long-term guy there. I know he was probably not, but it looks like Slayton, Parris Campbell, who sat with Daniel Jones, are the guys you're going to want for fantasy. Now I put those 2 guys in my top 150. Isaiah Hodgins been out, but let's say, forget about Isaiah Hodgins for a second. Is there any Giants wide receiver or outside of Darren Waller you're kind of looking at, Sky?
Unfortunately not, man. It's funny because you try to hype up quarterbacks and you're like, well, then their other guys have to be good. I buy into Daniel Jones. I think he takes another step. I think he's going to be, you've got him, I think, higher than anybody probably, but I've got him maybe top 15. I think he can have upside for sure with the rushing and all that. And then of course, Saquon. Other than that, even Darren Waller included, to be honest with you, I'm not excited about this offense. And I think it's less about Daniel Jones. It's more just there's many mouths to feed, but I don't think any of them exceptionally separate themselves from anybody else. There's no alpha on this team, in my opinion. Also, a name we haven't brought up yet, and he's a rookie. There's a lot to be proven, but he definitely has had some hot plays in training camp so far, and that's Jalen Hyatt, who I know is he's spiked in rookie-only dynasty drafts so far after a couple one-handed grabs. But that's the type of dude I'd rather have in redraft because you're getting him for free probably or in like the 15th round. And if he has a Darius Slayton rookie year where he pops off and he's free, I like that. But like Parris Campbell, I know you've talked about earlier this summer, Darius Slayton, Rondale Robinson is still around, Isaiah Hodgins, as you mentioned. There's just so many names for the Giants. No, I mean, Sterling Shepard is still around technically. Like there's just too many guys, and I'm not quite excited. But hey, man, you're the house Giants fan. Convince me otherwise. But right now, they're all kind of grouped between like wide receiver 60 and 80. I don't know. I just feel like they're all kind of the same.
Based on so if we're just talking redraft, I think you got Wan'Dale Robinson and Sterling Shepard coming off major injuries. And honestly, there's kind of talk that Shepard might not be back with the team. Slayton's kind of earned the trust of this offense. Now, he's got a nice baseline, like 700 yards receiving over the last few years, but that was dealing with a dumpster fire that was the Giants offense for a while. Then they had this kind of revamp being last year under Brian Daboll. So at least I know that Slayton probably go out there. He's going to get you 700 yards or so. But where these guys are going all after pick 190. So they're all free. So the question is, in PPR, I just think that Parris Campbell is probably the most likely guy consistently to see targets in the middle of the field, 5 for 50, that Cole Beasley role. But the way I actually have it now, I actually am going to take a shot on Slayton. I think I got him at 124 overall, which is still pretty late, but it's way higher than ADP. I just think that the Giants overall are going to have some semblance of a good passing game this season. So I'm going to take a shot on those guys. And those are their late round dart throw times anyway. So I'm just going to take a dart throw on a guy who could be the number one for the Giants. All right. Let's jump down to the next one. It's Devin Achane. Plays behind Myles Gaskin and Salvon Ahmed. And of course, the biggest thing there is that Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson did not play, and they sat with Tua and the starter. So quick question. Are you starting to get a little worried about Devin Achane? Is this a situation you're actually going to monitor, or are you actually still targeting him in drafts?
No, as the only person in the entire fantasy industry that still loves Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson, I'm not surprised. Devin Achane, I think, frankly, just like he came in with an injury designation. Again, we're talking week 1 of preseason and a rookie with high expectations. Like, some of these guys are thrown into the fire, like, hey, kid, prove something immediately or you're going to have an uphill battle. Other people are like, hey, man, let's bubble wrap you. Make sure that you're around next week while you heal up so we give you everybody an honest chance. I think that's the case right now. Wilson and Mostert are, one step away. Jeff Wilson, bro, was on the IR a couple years ago from getting out of a chair in the locker room. I don't want to talk about it, all right? These guys are very fragile. I love them both to death as former 49ers. They know McDaniel, obviously. I think they're obviously the starters. But Devin Achane will definitely be the number 3, maybe the number 2. So, I mean, Salvon Ahmed and these other running backs in the league, like, they have to make the team still, in my opinion. I don't see that necessarily happening. Myles Gaskin's a former 7th round pick. They've been okay, but I think those guys could be on the chopping block, frankly. So starting behind them, I don't think is a problem because he came in with an injury designation. If it happens next week, and he's cleared to be healthy, and the same thing happens, I think we have more to talk about. This particular week, I'm going to chalk it up to kid's not fully healthy. They don't want to get him hurt before it matters. Or maybe they're just trying to decide between the other 2 guys, Ahmed and Gaskin, if they're going to keep a 4th running back, which of those 2 guys is going to stick around, and maybe they cut the other one. That's more of what I'm thinking about versus worrying about Devin Achane personally.
I actually am going to say that if you somehow end up starting really wide receiver heavy, and you go for Kelsey, you get Darren Waller, and you find yourself searching for a late RB2, I'm willing to start the year with Raheem Mostert. I think he's going to get off to a decent start, a dominant run offense. There's been a lot of just this talk. Mostert's been talking this offseason about McDaniel's commitment to the run this season. It could be a great way to keep Tua healthy if they're not dropping back to pass as much.
Absolutely.
And I think if you're going to do that, you're going to have to do it with someone you know and you can rely on. And I think that's why I'm keeping an eye on Raheem Mostert in that situation, because I think you could get a nice RB2 flex play out of him, especially to get the season started while Devin Achane climbs up the draft board. All right, before we get to our next one, I'll just shout out Jamie. Thanks for joining once again, man. Always appreciate jumping on.
What up, Jamie?
Let's jump to the next one. Michael Thomas finally looks healthy, folks.
Let's go.
Plays all 12 snaps with Derek Carr. And so that's interesting. I love to see that he's on the field playing for, just give me 1 second. There we go. Sorry. Yes. 12 snaps with Derek Carr. Juwan Johnson as well plays 9 of the 12 snaps. I love to see that. He actually played ahead of Foster Morneau, which is good to see. We know the history with Darren Waller and how well he's played. So Juwan Johnson's a nice sleeper. So your quick thoughts about the Derek Carr and New Orleans Saints first preseason action.
Yeah. Love this all around, man. Got to be honest. Michael Thomas is somebody we just, I can't remember which mock. We've had about 8 this summer. One of our recent mocks though, I went on in about 3 minutes on Michael Thomas. Very excited about him. And again, we've all forgotten about him because he was the best player in fantasy football in 2019, got hurt in 20, remained hurt in 21, came back kind of last year, and he's kind of faded away. Michael Thomas is an incredible talent. He gets open, and he's going to demand targets. Also, he was the number 1 by far every year until basically this year when he's got Chris Olave on the other side, who arguably is the number 1 now. So if Chris Olave is getting double coverage, Michael Thomas is going to have single coverage. he's going to be wicked, especially in the red zone. And we know Amari Cooper, Michael Crabtree over the years, Darren Waller, of course. Derek Carr will throw it in the red zone. I like that a lot, especially as Alvin Kamara is out for the first couple of weeks. So Michael Thomas continues to soar up my rankings. I'm excited about that. And you don't have to draft him as high as I'm going to have him ranked, which is more exciting. On the other side, Juwan Johnson, somebody you and I boasted a few times. There was a bunch of Sunday lives in a row, Bob, when you and I were kind of like, hey, if you're streaming tight ends, Juwan Johnson. And sure enough, man, all you're looking for from a streamer is 4 for 40 and maybe a touchdown. Juwan Johnson went 4 for 40 and a touchdown 6 times last year. And he's free. He's not on anybody's radar. So I love this. And I do think all of this activity actually helps out guys like Chris Olave and even Alvin Kamara when he comes back, because you're not hyper focused on 1 or 2 players like they were last year in this offense. Plus Derek Carr is a supreme upgrade from what the Saints have had in the last couple of seasons at quarterback.
I think the big one is Derek Carr too, like this stability now. If Michael Thomas is actually healthy and now you have him and Olave, Rashid Shaheed did not play in this game. He's dealing with an injury, but if he's healthy, then you also have Juwan Johnson, a solid pass catcher. Alvin Kamara comes back. I think you got to start taking Derek Carr as probably a really like a top 15 option this season at quarterback. But for me, I have everybody ahead of ADP except Michael Thomas. I actually still about 17 spots lower than ADP, but I'm 35 spots higher than Juwan Johnson. I am pretty much all in on him as a late round tight end this year. I like him as one of my options as a late round guy. I'm got inside my top 150. But overall, I just think that this is a really exciting development. And Derek Carr, remember, earlier on the offseason, John Gruden went and visited with the Saints, and they talked a little bit between the coaching staff and John Gruden how they can kind of map out how they can map the offense around what Derek Carr did with John Gruden. I love that. I love to hear that. It means it's going to help with the translation, the transition, and I'm excited for that next year's step. Let's jump down to the next one. It's Skyy Moore. I think a lot of us are really kind of looking at this situation, wondering who's going to emerge. Kadarius Toney's banged up, of course, and also Isaiah Pacheco did not play in this game. But the receivers, Marcus Valdes-Scantling is set. And then you got Travis Kelce, who's the stud. And then who's going to be after that? And it looks like Skyy Moore will be on the field this year. So it's worth taking a shot on him in fantasy football. Sky, your quick thoughts about Skyy Moore playing almost an every down role with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Again, my only continual knock on Skyy Moore is that the second Y is just frankly unnecessary. I've gone 35 years with a single Y in my name, and I've done some pretty cool stuff. So I'm not sure why you have 2 Ys, but other than that, I love this kid. Bob, you have been the most hyped on Skyy Moore, certainly in the Rasball team and kind of throughout the industry in general. So I'm excited to see him get some hype for you quickly. And this is what we care about. He played every snap with the first team in 2 receiver sets. So you hear that a lot. 2 receiver, 3 receiver sets. What does that mean? Well, they have 2 receivers on the field, or they have 3 receivers on the field, 4, 5, 1, whatever. 2 receiver sets is very important, especially with the Chiefs. Here's why. You're going to have the number 1. Let's just say it's Kadarius Toney, for example. The second slot there is 1 other wide receiver. Right now, it looks like it's Skyy Moore. So any play, basically, where they have at least 2 wide receivers on the play, which is almost every play in football, Skyy Moore should be out there right now. He might even be the one if Kadarius Toney can't go. And my boy Justin Ross coming up hot should be out there as well. But Travis Kelce obviously is going to demand those targets. Skyy Moore can also be used in the run game. He can be using bubble screens. He is the burner that we thought was going to replace Tyreek Hill last year. Obviously got hurt. It didn't come to fruition as a rookie, but I think it can now. This is a great start for your boy, Bob, and this is exactly what we wanted to see from him. So Skyy Moore off to a hot start, and I was not hating on him, but kind of tempering expectations. I have to say he went above and beyond what I had expected, playing as much as he did with that first team. So that was great to see.
It's really just getting on the field. That's the first start. And that's what I wanted to see him get on the field, because last year he was like 20% routes run to dropbacks last year. That's not going to get it done for fantasy, but that's the first thing with Skyy Moore. When Toney comes back, who knows? I think MVS kind of is the every down receiver, and I actually have MVS 48 spots higher in ADP. I'm actually having 131 overall. His ADP is 179. So I'm high on him too, but Skyy Moore I have 91st overall inside my top 100. It's because, listen, Juju's vacating a lot of reps, a lot of targets from the slot. And Patrick Mahomes, by the way, likes to target the middle of the field too. I mean, he's been very good at that over his career. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is good at throwing everywhere, but just being on the field with Patrick Mahomes is worth a shot in the top 100. All right, let's jump down to the next one. Travis Etienne outstats Tank Bigsby 10-1. Well, I can tell you all that offseason hype. I think a lot of people brought up the fact that, Hasty came in for 2 passing long rolls, and then Tank Bigsby also got a short yardage, and everyone's like, oh man, Travis Etienne might be in between the 20s back. When they did their 2-point conversion, guess who was in the game? Travis Etienne. I am not stressed about it. The 10-1 is more notable than Tank Bigsby kind of coming. And by the way, Tank Bigsby didn't even convert the 3rd and short. So it's not even like he did a good job. So I think it is notable if you're going to bring up the one snap Tank Bigsby got, you also have to talk about the fact when they were on the 2-point conversion, Etienne was in the game, not Tank Bigsby. And that's essentially a goal line play. But quick thoughts about this, Sky. Do you have any more optimism for Travis Etienne?
Oh, yeah. I've been all over him. He's in my top 12 as of right now. I'm still working on rankings, obviously, but he's in my top 12 in PPR. I'm not concerned about Tank Bigsby at all. I will say, though, he is somebody I've been targeting in all of my drafts because Travis Etienne, they have a similar style, but Tank Bigsby is arguably, they're saying, maybe a better pass catcher, a little bit bigger, whatever. So he's a handcuff at minimum. B, if anything were to happen to Etienne, I think he slips in just fine. This is kind of cliche to say about Etienne, but it matters. Continuity. Going back to last year, we were saying it all the time. Well, Trevor Lawrence and Etienne played together as teammates in Clemson. That matters. So I do think that rapport is going to be very strong, especially on the dump down passes. We know he's a great pass catcher and can make plays happen. First team reps, again, he played 3 drives, which is quite a bit for veterans. I guess he's a veteran, second year, veterans in preseason. So again, maybe through the preseason as we go along, they see enough out of Etienne, they bench him to keep him healthy. Bigsby, I would imagine, will get more reps to be ready, but seeing Etienne come out of the gate and be the number 1, I don't take this as a Josh Jacobs like last year. Josh Jacobs was playing in game 4 of preseason with the starters. And everybody was worried about it. Like, oh God, he must be a backup. Man. He comes out, he's a top 5 running back, right? I don't see that at all with Travis Etienne. I think it's, look, this is a new offense, new system, new coordinator, new head coach. Let's get our guys out there, do enough to say something, get off the field healthy, get our rooks in there. And I think that's exactly what happened with Jacksonville. Love Travis Etienne. I hope he falls even more.
I have Travis Etienne 10 spots lower than ADP. And, this kind of makes me think, all right, maybe I bump him up just a little bit. I don't think I'm going to get aggressive on Etienne just because that I do think at some point Tank Bigsby is going to be like a 1B back. But when you start talking Aaron Jones or Travis Etienne, right, you're going to have A.J. Dillon there with Aaron Jones, and that situation is a lot more unknown. What's Jordan Love even going to be in that offense? So, it's hard to justify taking Aaron Jones ahead of Travis Etienne right now when Travis Etienne's tied probably to a better, we know is probably a better quarterback and a better offensive situation. So it's definitely it perked me up a little bit. I'm actually looking maybe to move Travis Etienne up, but overall, not too bad. All right, let's jump down to the next one. It's Khalil Herbert. And just for Jamie asked about Rashaad. Rashaad played exclusively with the 2nd and 3rd teams. Khalil Herbert played all 7 snaps with Justin Fields. And by the way, that includes third down plays, like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8. He was in the game. I was generally surprised about that. I would not expect him to be a 3-down back with the first team. Obviously, everyone, we know it's the first week, but this is still notable. And I actually moved Khalil Herbert up my ranks. But Sky, what's your thoughts about Herbert playing every snap with Justin Fields?
Absolutely love this. Early on in the summer, when David Montgomery got picked up by the Lions, you and I talked about this, and I brought up Khalil Herbert. But to repeat some of those notes, last year he averaged 5.7 yards per carry to David Montgomery's 4 yards per carry. I think Khalil Herbert is going to be the number 1. I like Rashaad a lot. Rashaad's a big back, and Rashaad could maybe be a goal line back, if you will. But Justin Fields is also maybe that guy also. So I think the Bears are kind of like the Eagles light, right? So like maybe, Khalil Herbert's going to be like the Kenny Gainwell, Miles Sanders out here, Rashaad, whatever kind of a thing. But Khalil Herbert's going to get plenty of work, and you're getting drafted as your running back 4 or 5 right now, right? And you can even pick up Rashaad for free at the end of your draft, especially if you're in a keeper league or anything like that. In dynasty leagues, he's obviously going up more because he's got the handcuff potential, and Herbert's coming off of 2 season-ending injuries, but he's healthy right now. He's been playing quite well, and we know that he can pass catch as well. And I think the Jags, of course, are going to take a big step forward, I believe. So I'm excited about Etienne, but also with the Bears. I think they're going to take a significant overall step forward as an offense. And I think Herbert leads the charge, at least while he's healthy. So I'm buying in while I can, and it's not going to be expensive.
The reason why people are fading Herbert was pass pro. It's all about Justin Fields now. And can they protect the quarterback? That's why David Montgomery was the preferred back. That's why he got all the passing game work. And Herbert, if you just look at his pass pro metrics from PFF, they're not good. They're horrible.
No.
So the question is, if he makes that step, and that's why Rashaad, people were talking about Rashaad because he's shown a little bit in pass pro. But the fact that he's in there on third down shows me that they're like, hey, you know what? The number one most important thing, can you keep Justin Fields upright? And that's what's important. The offensive line, by the way, is much improved. They got Nate Davis now from Tennessee Titans. They made some moves on the offensive line overall. I like that, and I have to take him. Like, I can't pass on a guy who's going to be tied to probably a prolific running offense with Justin Fields. I think that right now I have 81st overall, 25 spots higher than ADP. So I'm all in on Khalil Herbert.
I'll jump in a little bit more on Rashaad. I'll give Jamie a couple more seconds. Rashaad is a beast. This kid's legit. Like, go back to college. He actually backed up Bijan Robinson at Texas. So there was no chance Rashaad was going to have the chance to be the number one guy there with Bijan. It just wasn't going to happen. But they both got drafted. You're right. The pass pro is going to keep him on for goal line, important plays, third downs, whatever. Maybe he gets first downs and Khalil gets, second longs and third downs and stuff like that. But if I'm drafting Khalil Herbert, which I've loved this kid for a number of years and been burned twice because he got hurt, but you can't predict injuries. If I'm getting Khalil Herbert at all of my drafts, I'm pretty much reaching a round or two later for Rashaad. I want to make sure that I get him on my team as not only the handcuff, but the high upside just in case guy that can sit on my bench for 8 weeks if it needs to. But when he comes in, if he's the number one guy, he might arguably be better than Herbert. I just think Herbert has more breakout ability and knows the offense, obviously. But, man, those rookie running backs come in hot from week 8 through the rest of the season. We see it every single season, and Rashaad could definitely be that guy.
And listen, Jamie brings us a good point. Rashaad was playing in the 2-minute drill, but we're focusing just on with Justin Fields. And I know they had these really 2 quick strikes, a screen to DJ Moore, a dump off, and they both went to the house. So I know the offense overall didn't have like a sustaining drive, and we also didn't see it into the second quarter. We didn't see it into the fourth quarter. But just seeing him every single snap with Justin Fields is what we're talking about today. But yes, like I said, this is stuff we're going to be talking next week. We're going to talk about something brand new. Rashaad could get work with Justin Fields, and this topic will have to change. But the fact that he played every down, even third downs, is what's notable there. I shipped out to Rondale Moore, plays behind Michael Wilson and Zach Pascal. Now, Rondale Moore is a darling of most people, and I had him in my early top 150. He is out. First of all, this is a brand new coaching staff, and I'll say this until I'm blue in the face. We don't know how they feel about incumbent players. What they did is they brought in Michael Wilson in the draft. They brought Zach Pascal, who, by the way, was with the Eagles with the James Gannon last year. So they bring over a guy that he coached with played under last year. James Gannon is the defensive coordinator, but I'm just saying he was on the staff. And now he's playing behind both of those guys. Currently today, Rondale Moore is going right around 136, so he's inside the top 150. I am not touching Rondale Moore anymore. I think he's fallen behind these guys, and he's also not handpicked by this coaching staff. So, Sky, quick thoughts about the Arizona receiving core as a whole. Are you looking at anybody besides Marquise Brown? Are you targeting Marquise Brown? What's your thoughts on Rondale Moore?
Nope. I might do it just because I love you, Bob. I might draft James Conner in a league just to say that I did it. So you keep me on the podcast. Other than that, I can't imagine a scenario where I'm even looking at a Cardinal in a draft. That being said, if like somehow Hollywood falls, sorry, I got puppy alert over here. If somehow I have, Hollywood Brown falling to my wide receiver 3 or 4 and I'm stacked and it works out that way, I would love to have his upside. but I don't trust the quarterback situation there, maybe even with Kyler. And these other auxiliary guys, I think, are maybe fun. They're cool waiver wire guys to pay attention to. One injury could help spike one of them. And yes, they have playmaking ability or so. But as far as like going into drafts in the next couple of weeks, I am not going to be targeting any of these guys. Certainly something to monitor because these up and coming players tend to, break out and we need to find those kind of things. So I'm paying attention. But I can't imagine I'm drafting anybody outside of Hollywood Brown as a receiver. And maybe James Conner, but we've talked about that on other shows.
I can tell you this right now, that it makes me feel like I want Marquise Brown more, because if Rondale Moore is off and you have a rookie, Michael Wilson and Zach Pascal as the other guys, honestly, I think Marquise Brown is probably someone I'm attacking. I already have him really high. I have him 60th overall, 16 spots higher than ADP. I'm in on him. I think Colt McCoy, by the way, we've talked about this 100 times. Colt McCoy is a functional quarterback. He'll get you around 200 yards. He'll execute the offense. Listen, guys like James Conner have been better with him. So honestly, I think this makes me more confident in the two main guys, which is Conner and Marquise Brown.
Where do you have Hollywood right now?
60th overall.
Okay, so ECR expert consensus ranking has him at 58. So you're pretty much right on par there. Mm-hmm. In 12 games last year, Brown had 67 catches, 709 yards, and 3 touchdowns in the first season with Arizona. So again, kind of learning the system, Kyler in and out, what have you. So he was wide receiver 33. Again, if you're getting him as a back end wide receiver 3 with his upside and funneled targets, I don't hate that. I just think there's other guys around, like George Pickens is a guy that I'd rather take the upside with him instead of Marquise Brown, things like that.
Oh, don't start with George.
Let's go. Keep going. Don't get
sidetracked. I'm sorry. Pickens is one of the
don't
guys.
Don't get sidetracked.
All right. No, it's too late. It's too late. I'm already upset. That you just compared to like another guy that I'm really high on, which I have lower. And now I got all right. Another show. Anyway, we're gonna keep rolling. The last topic we're gonna cover today is Brian Robinson versus Antonio Gibson. Listen, they rotated evenly. 11 snaps for Robinson, 10 for Gibson. Robinson was obviously the lead guy, and he obviously played. And the interesting thing was Robinson played on third downs. Now, there was a 3rd and 30 that Gibson did come in and play. But they did kind of rotate series here, and it does make you wonder, like, who's going to emerge as the RB1. I have flag planted on Brian Robinson this year. I think last year he got shot in the leg. I don't think that. I know he got shot in the leg last year.
There's documentation that would prove that he got shot in the leg.
Me and Brian are really close, and he just told me in secrecy that happened. Yeah. But in all seriousness, he just like down the stretch last year, he just started becoming a workhorse. I think that he's the guy I want. But it does make me pause for a second if there is a true rotation at RB. But what's your quick thoughts about the Washington Commanders RB situation? Do you have a player you prefer, or are you fading them both at ADP?
Man, no, I don't really prefer. I did prefer Brian Robinson because Antonio Gibson kind of fell off last year. And Brian Robinson, of course, missed a couple games coming back from the injury, but then came on hot to end the year. So if I'm going on a recency bias, which I, of course, do not do as much as possible, but if I do that, which I think a lot of drafters will, Brian Robinson stands out in my head of like, oh yeah, that guy was better than Antonio Gibson. But if I go 2 years ago before Brian Robinson came in and Antonio Gibson was the rookie, he was a stud. And I think this Washington offense in general is going to take a significant leap forward this year. It's no numbers to be significant, but just to give an idea, Antonio Gibson had 3 targets and Brian Robinson only had 1. We know that, obviously it sounds silly now, but coming out, Antonio Gibson was kind of like, he's going to be the Christian McCaffrey of this offense, right? All that means
I fell for that so bad.
I know. Everyone did. It's like Travis Etienne's going to be the Alvin Kamara of the offense, and Jahmyr Gibbs is this year Alvin Kamara. Take the name off of the jersey when you hear shit like that. It's not the player; it's the style and like what that player does for their offense and how this player is going to work in our offense. So when I hear Antonio Gibson's going to be the Christian McCaffrey, do I expect CMC numbers? Obviously not. But what I do expect is 6 targets a game for my running back, 10, 12 touches in the backfield. That's significant. 15 to 18 touches for anybody is great. So I like that a lot. But Brian Robinson did prove, and again, Alabama running back, he did prove that he's got the goal line work. He runs hard. He's fun to watch. Unfortunately, Bob, this is a tough one. I love both of these players. I can imagine when push comes to shove on draft day and I'm on the clock and there's a Dalvin Cook and a Brian Robinson, or there's a, I don't know, David Montgomery, maybe Alexander Madison and Antonio Gibson, somebody like that. I'm probably going to stay away from Washington because I believe in both of the guys, if that makes sense. I think they're both good enough to eat each other's work and to keep them both middle RB2s with the occasional spike, depending on who scores that week. But on a week to week, I think they're both pretty significantly better than the other at running it versus passing. And I just think they're going to even each other out. So as far as drafting goes, I'm probably not targeting either one of these guys, but if I had to pick one of them right now, it's Brian Robinson by a nose, but they're not as separated now as they were coming into the summer. Antonio Gibson has significantly closed that gap, but if I had to choose one of them, it'd probably be Brian Robinson still.
Well, ADP on Rasball right now, we have him at 94 and 98. So
that's what I mean.
Pretty close.
That's what I mean. They're
I'm the opposite.
Are they the same in all formats?
Robinson's 94. Yeah, I could look. Yeah. So the ADP,
I have ECR pulled up, but you got Rasball, so take a look at that.
Yeah. Well, let's see.
So the ECR here, I'll buy some time while you're doing that. So
no,
ECR
I have
has,
it. I have it. So right now today, Brian Robinson they're identical in best ball 10s. Gibson's higher in NFC. Gibson's higher in underdog. Then it goes. So when you get to ESPN has Brian Robinson about 12 spots higher. Sleeper has Gibson higher. And then Yahoo has Brian Robinson higher. So it's completely different based on where you're looking at. It's a little bit like this. I just think it's Brian Rob. I understand if you just look at the Gibson's just not a pure running back. And we kind of seen it. And people will talk about, if you just look at last season down the stretch, Robinson was the better running back guy. If you're going to give a guy 12 to 15 carries every single week, it's Brian Robinson. You look at the stats in the game. He looked better as a runner. So I just think that Eric Bieniemy, a former running backs coach, a guy who, by the way, is intense, which I got to tell you, huge red flags that players are coming out and saying like, yeah, the coach is a little intense. I don't like it.
They're bums. You know what's nice about that though, is you have some OGs, Tyreek Hill and other people who played under Bieniemy for a number of years elsewhere. And they're all like, bro, you guys are tripping. Like, this dude has won championships. He's had multiple successful offenses. Like, let him do his thing. You're a professional athlete. Like, you can't handle some criticism. You're in the wrong profession. And think about the culture, right? Kansas City is a successful culture and they coach a certain way. Washington has been doo-doo for a long time. And, they don't have a similar culture in general, I think, at least on the offense. I know that, of course, they have the defense there, with that mentality, but they have not had the running gun offense. So hopefully that'll improve them. But I agree with you, man. I think they need to, just let the man do his thing for a little bit, and then you can judge.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still going to lean Robinson. I have him 20 spots higher than ADP, and I have Gibson 20 spots lower just based on it. But I got to tell you this, if this happens again next week, I'll probably push them closer because you just can't ignore it. It's clear that there might be a rotation. I lean Robinson a little bit more, but we'll see how that goes. All right, that's all we got today, folks. Once again, this is our top 10 preseason takeaways you need to know. Make sure you follow us across the board at Rasball Fantasy on Rasball NFL, myself at Bobby LaMarco on Twitter. We've been dropping these updates, talking about which starting quarterbacks played and who didn't and how that impacts fantasy football. Now, Sky, make sure you go follow him as well at Sky Guasco. Tell the people we got upcoming on rasball.com, what articles and where they can find your content.
Love it, man. Can't wait. I've been kind of saving some of my articles for this time of year. I'm going to be dropping some fun ones, everybody. The fun ones everybody likes to read. They're nice and quick. They're quick hitters. Going to have a paragraph for about 4 players each in each article. I'm going to be dropping my busts, my breakouts, my sleepers, my must-have players, my do not draft players, which are maybe more important than my must-have players. I've got all those articles coming up in the next couple of weeks. Make sure to find my articles, Bob's articles, everybody else on rasball.com for free, and check out the content. And always, check out the podcast, folks. You're on your way. You're eating lunch. I take myself out to lunch and dinner once a week, a selfie date for mental health. I love doing it. When I do that, I have my headphones in the corner in a restaurant by myself. I love every minute of it, and I'm listening to Rasball on the podcast side. So you're mowing the lawn, walking the dog on the go. Check out the podcast. Leave a rate and review anywhere you listen to your podcast, the Rasball Fantasy Football Podcast.
Thank you, Sky. Make sure you go to razzball.com. Just dropped my new latest top 150. Got a couple updates from this week as takeaways. And by the way, the best part too is now I have access to the back end. So I'm updating this thing daily, and I'll be dropping my updates on Twitter. So go follow us across the board at Bobby LaMarco and Razzball NFL. Thank you for joining us once again. Make sure you subscribe to us on TikTok and IG. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube. This is becoming the flagship. We're super excited. Thanks for joining again. Thank you, Sky. We are out of here, folks.